Didan Notzach, Didan Notzach, sorry, just be careful. Notzach, thank you. I'm going to keep it here. Hey, L'chaim, L'chaim. Good yontiv, good yontiv, good yontiv. Stach ze ayei masa Hashem nagila v'nismech avoi. The sign is a kleiner, but the yontiv is a greiser. Today is the yontiv of our day of Deir Hashvi'i. You know, it's today, this year, we mark 35 years since the Nitzachin of Hei Teves, of the internet's not working, the mic's not working. It's all good. We're back on. 35 years since the Nitzachin of Hei Teves, of Didan Notzach. It's an interesting 35 years is a number that's very closely connected to Hei Teves, because anybody who listened to the videos and to the tapes, you always hear 35 Jahr. 35 Jahr is a time when the tzad shekeneged, the opposing side, can come with tainus, can come with claims that are, as the Rebbe says, that are entirely not true, but they can claim the opposite, chas v'sholem, of hu b'chaim. And the fact that 35 years have passed is the greatest proof. The fact that we gather here today, and the Mirza Hashem soon online, everyone is going to gather with us. Hundreds and thousands of Chassidim are gathering to celebrate Didan Notzach, is the biggest proof, as the Rebbe leapt, and that every year that goes by, the celebrations get bigger, because the impact of the Rebbe gets bigger, gets stronger. And in the Lashon of the Rebbe, inuns and bauns and durchuns, that through us we reach Yidden throughout the world. So B'meila, we gather here today. Don't worry if you're talking, it's okay, the internet can't hear you anyway. So say l'chaim with each other, say l'chaim together. When the Rebbe says we should be able to celebrate today as the Rebbe deserves it, as we deserve it. Should be Didan Notzach, it should be the Nitzachin over Golus, and we should be able to go to the Gula Amitis Vashlema l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim. The Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe speaks about this in the Sichos, the Alter Rebbe writes in his letter that the Geula of Yutes Kislev was Le'enei Ha'amim V'asarim. That not only was it something that the Alter Rebbe was in jail, and then the Alter Rebbe was released from jail, but it was something that was recognized by the nations and by the officers, by the people, by the world. And the Rebbe says that this Geula of the Alter Rebbe, being recognized Le'enei Ha'amim V'asarim, is a hachana to v'hoisa la'avaya amlucha, to a time of geula, of redemption, when the entire world will recognize that the Eibishter is the king. Now the same thing happens when it comes to Hei Teves. When it comes to Hei Teves, the way it's written in to the Pesach Dovos, to the introductions to the Ma'amorim, the way it's written in the subtitles of the Ma'amorim, Yem Bei Didan Notzach Be'efin Golui Le'enei Kol Ha'amim. It wasn't just a Didan Notzach. It wasn't just a victory. It was a victory that was recognized and was sealed by the superpower, by the greatest power of the world at the time, and at this time as well, that the American government and the American court system recognized that Hu B'chaim, and they recognized that the Rebbe is the balabas on the world. In order to get to that point, you needed to have kalim, tools in the natural world, that to be able to lead us, to be able to get to a point where a judge, an American judge, can give the decision that he did. And in order to get to the judge, we needed lawyers that would represent the Rebbe, would represent Chabad Lubavitch. I heard today, I was listening to on Hei Teves, Tavshim Mem Zayin, they tried to make a Farbrengen in 770 with all of the celebrations. So Rabbi Krinsky said that after Mincha and after the Sicha, that was after Mincha on Hei Teves, the Rebbe told Rabbi Krinsky that he should call the lawyers and he should say thank you. He should give a thanks to the lawyers for their efforts in the case, and he should share with them a thought from the Sicha, from the talk that the Rebbe had just spoken after Mincha. And he shared with them the word about the Agolis, the Egla Arufa, that you have to make sure that nobody gets lost. The whole idea of Egla Arufa. And one of the lawyers, I don't know which one it was, maybe it was one of you, but one of the lawyers said, he asked to respond to the Rebbe, that in this week's parsha it says, "V'nafshay kshura b'nafshay," that his soul is connected, is bound with his soul, referring to Yaakov and Yosef, that the soul of Yaakov is bound with the soul of Yosef. So the lawyer said to Rabbi Krinsky that he should give over to the Rebbe, that he sees that v'nafshay kshura b'nafshay, that the soul of the Rebbe is bound with the Sfarim, that it's v'nafshay kshura b'nafshay, and therefore the Nitzochen, the victory of Hei Teves, was a victory of v'nafshay kshura b'nafshay, the bond with the Sfarim. And of course the lawyers always know what they're talking about, but as much as he knew, he couldn't know the depth of the connection, as the Rebbe explained so many times, that each sefer is a piece of the Rebbe, and therefore it's not just v'nafshay kshura b'nafshay, but it's a mamish achelik from Rebbe Malein. So to follow in the footsteps of Rabbi Krinsky and of the Rebbe's instruction, I would like to say thank you to two of the attorneys that were on the team, Mr. Harvey Stone and Mr. Richard Dolan. Tonight and every night, and in this crowd and in every crowd, you guys are the heroes. You know, the Eibishter, God Almighty, needs agents on this earth to be his hands and feet, to do what has to be done, so that he could run the world the way he does. And you were the hands and feet of God Almighty to bring about this victory. So we're thankful till today and forever. Ad Seif Kol Adeiros, for the end of time we will forever be grateful. And we would therefore like to ask of you if you would share with us some of your impressions of that time period, working in that time, bringing to the moment of Didan Notzach. My dear friends, I have the honor to call up Mr. Harvey Stone, representing his partner, Mr. Richard Dolan, and all of the other attorneys that were present at the time and are present here with us today. If the Elam could give a little bit of attention and to be quiet while I talk, I don't care that much. But on our board, that darf man ein bisschen derech eretz.
Thank you. Thank you. I am honored to be here tonight for this joyous occasion. I am honored and moved to receive a blessing at the resting place of the Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Schneerson of righteous memory. On December 31st, 1989, my law partner, Richard Dolan, and I were invited to 770 Eastern Parkway to be blessed by the Rebbe in connection with another matter, to be in the presence of such a great spiritual leader makes an impression that stays with you for life. I feel that his blessing has impacted me and my family. My grandchildren are following in the ways of the Torah. This past Shabbos, I had the pleasure of participating in the bar mitzvah of my oldest grandchild. I am honored as well to stand here near the grave of the sixth Rebbe, Rabbi Joseph Yitzhak Schneerson of blessed memory. Between 1939 and 1946, the sixth Rebbe played a heroic role in rescuing the library now kept at 770 Eastern Parkway and clarifying that it belongs to the Lubavitcher community. This brings us to our subject tonight, the famous victory for the Lubavitcher community in Agudas Chassidei Chabad of United States v. Gurari. As you know, at stake was a matter of immense importance, ownership of the library. Our law firm was one of three firms representing plaintiff Agudas Chassidei Chabad. Just to be clear, my own role in the case was minor. The main attorney for our firm working on the case was Richard Dolan. I vividly remember the day when, as part of the discovery process, I joined the attorneys for plaintiff and defendants to inspect the library. I would like to tell you about the federal judge who tried and decided this case, and about the remarkable array of lawyers on both sides. First, the lawyers. The lead attorney for plaintiff was Nathan Lewin, a giant of intellect, and for over half a century, the preeminent lawyer protecting the vital interests of the Jewish people, and in particular, the rights of Orthodox Jewish communities. He was born in Lodz, Poland in 1936. His family managed to escape from Poland in 1939 and arrived in the United States in 1941. He had a spectacular academic record, leading to a clerkship with Supreme Court Justice John M. Harlan, and a spectacular career in the Justice Department before starting his own firm in Washington, D.C. He has argued 28 cases in the United States Supreme Court, an astonishing number. The young lawyer working with Mr. Lewin at his firm was Seth Waxman. He, too, has had an illustrious career as Solicitor General of the United States and in private practice. Jerome Shestak of blessed memory, a highly prominent Philadelphia attorney, also represented plaintiff. Two distinguished lawyers, Alvin Hellerstein and Brian Cogan, represented defendants. Both are now federal judges. The judge assigned to the case was Charles P. Sifton. He was perhaps the most intellectual of the judges in the Eastern District of New York. Among other things, he graduated summa cum laude from Harvard University in 1957, before the era of grade inflation. His former wife was Elizabeth Sifton, daughter of Reinhold Niebuhr, the great 20th century Protestant theologian, who, by the way, supported Israel and its development. Judge Sifton issued his decision in the library case in January 1987. Years later, he and I became friends. He died in 2009. Only a few months ago did I learn that he had a Jewish grandfather. To sum up, it was providential that Nathan Lewin represented Agudas Chassidei Chabad and that the case went to Judge Sifton. If you have not done so, I urge you to read Judge Sifton's decision. In 24 single-spaced pages, he outlines the history of the Lubavitcher movement and details the complex circumstantial evidence leading to the conclusion that the library belongs to the community. The story that he tells plays out against the terrible events of the last century, from confiscation of the former library by the Soviet Union to the sixth Rebbe's hairbreadth escape from Poland and Latvia to Sweden and the United States. In Judge Sifton's words, quote, "The library was not held by the sixth Rebbe as his personal property, but had been delivered to plaintiff to be held in trust for the benefit of the religious community of Chabad Hasidism. Amongst all the evidence, Judge Sifton singled out what he called, quote, one extraordinary letter which sets forth clearly and unambiguously the relationship between the books, their owners, and the community. That letter was written in 1946 by the sixth Rebbe and addressed to Dr. Alexander Marks, librarian of the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. The sixth Rebbe implored Dr. Marks to make the State Department understand that the manuscripts and books, then still in Europe, were, quote, religious treasures, a possession of the nation, and that the State Department must work energetically to locate them. The letter ended with an urgent request that Dr. Marks, quote, testify on the great value these manuscripts and books for the Jewish people in general, and particularly for the Jewish community of the United States, to whom this great possession belongs. I thank all of you for your kind invitation to Richard and me. I thank Chabad for the phenomenal work that it does around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. All right. L'chaim, l'chaim. Thank you again. Those are beautiful words. It's of course kedai to mention in our as it comes Hei Teves, and we're celebrating together. We're referring to the the Mr. I forgot your name.
Harvey Stone.
Harvey Stone. There we go. Harvey Stone had just mentioned the letter of Dr. Marks, and it's known that the Rebbe from the get-go had instructed, advised the attorneys that this was the letter upon which to build the case. And it took a while, I'm saying this kindly, it took a while for the attorneys to get on board that this was the what to build the case upon. And then, as Mr. Stone just shared, once you read the verdict, you see that from the very, very beginning, the Rebbe was right, and this was the letter that affected and that changed and that the verdict, the decision was based on. Of course, we know also what the Rebbe spoke about in the Sikha of Beis Oder, Tavshin Memches, that the words of the Rebbetzin, the unforgettable words of the Rebbetzin, that the Sfarim belong to the Chassidim because her father belongs to the Chassidim. We know that Rabbi Krinsky, who was present at the deposition shares, 2 points. Number one, that when the Rebbe said that, the lawyers from the other side, they threw their pencils down. Like they were hoping for something that they could work with. And when the Rebbe said unequivocally that the Sfarim belong to the Chassidim because my father belongs to the Chassidim, they threw their pencils down like there was nothing to be gotten from this. And then at a certain point in the case, I believe it was the third Friday of the end of the third week of the trial, the judge himself requested, he wanted to hear the recording from the deposition. And until that point, there was no way to know. The judge was, as a judge should be, you couldn't tell on his face what his emotions were or what he was thinking and which side he was going. And when he heard the words from the Rebbe, he said to himself, almost under his breath, he said, remarkable. And it was the first indication to the Chassidim that we were headed in the direction of a Nitzachon. And after Chav Shvat, the Rebbe mentions this as one of the great accomplishments of the Rebbetzin, that it was her Mesidus Nefesh to say these words, despite the personal cost that led to the Nitzachon, to the victory, and the thank you, the gratitude that we owe to the Rebbetzin on today on Hei Teves is beyond words. Hayomim ha'elu niskarim v'nasim. We know that the Rebbe tells us that every year on Yotes Kislev, Reb Nachum, the Einekul of the Alter Rebbe, would tell over the story of the Meiser and the Geula, the arrest and the redemption of the Alter Rebbe. And it was such an important thing to do that if somebody important would walk in after he already started the story, he would start again from the beginning. It's interesting to note that the Rebbe says in the Sikha, Yotes Kislev Tavshin Chav Beis, that he always started from the part where the Alter Rebbe went at the age of 18 to the Magid of Mezrich. It's a whole arichis of a Sikha that the beginning of the whole Sipur of the Meiser and the Geula is when the Alter Rebbe goes to his Rebbe at the age of 18. Anyway, the story of Hei Teves and the story of the pre-Nitzachon and the story of the Nitzachon and after the Nitzachon deserves to be told and deserves to be re-experienced, and through Nizkarim becomes Nasim. As we know, the Rebbe would say, B'Shem de Baal Shem Tev HaKeres HaMegillah L'Mafrei L'Yotza, that if you read the Megillah as a story of something that happened in the past, then you're not Yotza. You don't fulfill your obligation, because the story is a story that happened then, but it's a story that is happening now every year and every year stronger and stronger. Now, if we have to, I remember, I was a kid, Hei Teves Tavshim Zayin. I was playing in the hallway of the Farmington building on Middle Belt Road, and I remember Rabbi Beryl Shem Tov running through the hallway, and after him Rabbi Yitzchak Kagan Lahavdul Ben Chaim L'Chaim came running down the hallway, and he screamed, Didan Notzach! Didan Notzach! And we knew in a second, we knew exactly what he meant. And of course we had every geschmack to run into all the classrooms and stop the learning and tell everyone that it's Didan Notzach. Of course it took a few hours, and my father and everyone else went to the airport and left us behind. We were too young, or we weren't really too young, but but they left us behind. And that cry of Didan Notzach is something that is forever on our hearts, and forever, every year we remember it, and v'nasim, and we live with it. So who else really could share a little bit about the story of Hei Teves, if not someone who was a bacher at that time, a bacher in some 70. We know the story, not a story, the Rebbe said, "Was wollen sagen die Bachrim." So Mamela, the program continues with sharing some of the story of Hei Teves, what it meant to be living through that kufa. And for that we're going to ask Rabbi Zalman Volavik, the Rabbi Shliach in 5 towns, and someone who had the privilege, had the schus of being a bacher in the years of Tavshim Mem Hey, Mem Vav, Mem Zayin, and will share with us the avir of 770 and what it was like to be a bacher in those times. In the meantime, Eden Lach Zogt L'chaim, say L'chaim, Farbrengen a little bit. It's our Yom Tov. It's our Yom Tov. The whole Didan Notzach is all for us. So just to sit and hear Maiselach, if it's only the Niskarim, it's not going to go anywhere. It has to be V'nasim. And it can't be V'nasim unless we say L'chaim. L'chaim, L'chaim.
Didan Notzach with a masker. Didan. You ever get a chance to dance the celebration? Didan Notzach, Didan Thank you for the loan of the hat. Pleasure. And I have to work out tomorrow. At least water or something. Shahakal, I don't know. Chaim, Chaim. I can't wash it down. Rebbe, either it was our Yutas Kislev, or as we hear, our Yud Beis Tammuz. So I'll share with you just a little bit of, personally, our experience. And to us, it started on Yud Beis Tammuz, 1985, Toshim Mem Hey in camp. And we suddenly heard the Rebbe addressing us about a topic that we never heard before. We heard the Rebbe's pain about halacha conversions, giyur halacha, shleimus haaretz, the security in Israel. And we heard that pain and that scream. But the Rebbe talking about active live bombs, and not about Iran, He's talking about books, objects that were perceived as a lebedike bombe. It was like something outrageous. We never heard such lashonos, such expressions. But we heard the Rebbe's pain, and we got the chill, and we recognized that the Rebbe was, in a sense, bringing us into his pain and sharing it with us in a very deep fashion. And then following came the Yechidus for the guests who came for Yud Beis Tammuz. They had their audience. And again, the Rebbe shared his pain. Recognizing the Rebbe sharing it with us, bringing us into his, if we can say, emotion, pain, etc. And then what followed was the court case that started on Yitzhak Kislev. And I remember I was in Montreal at the time, and one of our mentors was Farbrengen with us. And I remember him sitting and crying all night. We were younger yeshiva students. And he was crying about the kisei havos, how the foundation is being rocked, is being shaken. We didn't get much, but we knew it was serious. It was intense. And, those are from the Farbrengens that we remember, one of our mentors leading it. And he shared the pain with us from a more mature perspective, you can say. We were, after all, children, teenagers, trying to grasp what was going on. We knew we had to say extra tehillim. We knew we had to add in charity tzedakah. We knew that busloads were going to court, as was mentioned earlier, filling the courthouse, and the interest that was there. We knew that things were happening. We tried to do our share. On Shabbos Chanukah, the Rebbe again addressed it. And we used to get, it was the era that I think that faxes were just starting. There was something called fax on the roll. And we would hear about the Farbrengen, and the Rebbe is reiterating that we're an active group. And we knew we're active. Chabad, how can we not be active? But the Rebbe is reinforcing it. If you remember then, when the Rebbe also addressed to actually put on the building that it belongs to Agudas Chabad. And we were like living it and reliving it every day. And even after the case was over, you're waiting for a decision. Every single day you're waiting for the decision. You're waiting. You're hoping, is it going to be today? Is it going to be tomorrow? And you're waiting and you're living. And then I had the good fortune at Shabbos and Vechom that I was in Crown Heights. And the Rebbe had what we knew as the pinched nerve. That's when I learned what a pinched nerve is. Sadly, we learned that from the Rebbe. And we learned that the Rebbe was in pain, and his agony and aggravation is affecting his physical health. And it tore us to pieces. The Rebbe didn't come down to daven, he came down to the Farbrengen, but not to daven. And I'm coming from Montreal, and we didn't have the luxury of davening with the Rebbe every day and every Shabbos. And you look forward to it, and here you are, and something strange is happening, like really something that we're so not accustomed. And we're used to the Rebbe carrying us through all times, good times and better times. And here suddenly, we're all at a loss and looking up to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe is sharing his pain. We know that during this whole back and forth of the negotiations, there was a thought, let's just buy out the opposition. If they want money, let's give them money. But the Rebbe insisted, no, it has to go through the system. It has to be a very clear declaration. It has to be something that is decided that we recognize it was a spiritual battle, and the Rebbe constantly reminded us and reiterated that it wasn't just a matter of objects, but there was a spiritual battle taking place, questioning the existence, the vitality of the Chabad as a movement. And it was quieter from the Rebbe's perspective afterwards. I came to New York to learn in September Elul of Toshim and Vav. And joining Ohel Teirah was a very, very unique place to learn. If you remember the Beis Medrash, it was like a classic modern art place. And we were sitting there in the basement in the winter. We didn't know if it was day or night. And we're sitting there, and it's Hei Teves. And we're getting ready for our test. And there was a payphone right by the entrance to the Beis Medrash, and the phone rings, and suddenly we hear a scream, Didan Notzach. Seconds, the place was empty. Empty. And we didn't walk up Kingston Avenue. We were like in a cloud. You didn't feel yourself. You were somewhat numb from joy. There was the excitement. By the time we got there, I mean, no one from outside of New York had gotten there yet, obviously. And we were there. It was initially a very small circle. And, you know, when we read about his Galgulu B'Cheves Peterburg, that when there were tumble sauces made in the streets of Peterburg during the liberation of the previous Rebbes, and it was like, what does it mean? We heard about it, but we saw it here. It was just an amazing. The joy was everyone's joy in the most unique fashion. You really can't describe it. You really can't describe it. You saw the video. We know it today. We probably know many more details than we knew then. Many more details, but the feeling is something that we have to try and relive every year. I have to confess, my friends know that I'm, what they call me, somewhat balabatish, as they call it. And I held back from saying l'chaim until after Mincha. I wanted to be cognizant when I saw the Rebbe the first time coming down to be with us during this joy and to be able to, we were hoping and expecting a sicha talk with the Rebbe. And I recognized that, yes, that's what happens when you are somewhat too organized. And it was, part of it, by the way, was everybody was in a different world. I mean, we were everyone. You didn't have to have the l'chaim, by the way. You didn't need the drink. You really didn't. It was, you were in a cloud. You were literally in a cloud. And the dancing continued. Thursday night came the big Sudas Hidah, a formal thank you party. I remember Nat Lewin expressing himself, borrowing an expression from this week's Pasha Torah portion, Ki eich LL 770 vasfori meinenu iti. And that's how he said his focus was, how can I ascend to 770 without these books and the significance of these books with me? Rav Landa Olav Hasholem opened up the Sudas Hidah, if we can recall, Yoidu Lashem Chazdoi V'Niflois of Neodam. It wasn't just unity. All in that room were one person. As the Alter Rebbe describes in the Perek Lev and Tanya, that's what took place in that room in 770 and by Chassidim throughout the world. The Farbrengen that went through the night, those of us who remember, Rabbi Yoel said, L'chaim, Farbreng through the night. Rav Landa, chief rabbi of Bnei Brak, was part of that celebration in the most unique of fashions that I don't think Bnei Brak ever saw before or after, was right there at Hei Teves. It was a very, very, and again, I have to confess that I tried to stay somewhat cognizant because I want to absorb it. I know some of my colleagues may disagree and say that's not the way to do it, but okay. You dance.
Maybe now you should do it too.
We danced. We danced. We rejoiced. Shabbos break, the Farbrengen, then Motzei Shabbos again, and actually during the Farbrengen. And I'll fast forward to the next year before I go back. Came next year, first annual celebration, and what do you do? And we remember, it's the first. Rosh Chodesh Kislev, when the Rebbe recovered from his heart attack in 1977, I was a younger child. I remember somewhat what was happening in Montreal. But this was, to me, and to all of us who were there, to many of us, our first of such a celebration. And no one knew how, a Rebbe, who are we to guess a Rebbe? And the Rebbe addressed that sign that was initially very controversial, that was put up on the back wall of 770. And the Rebbe addressed it and its significance and what was said about it. And the Rebbe accepted and shared, as it was the custom, that an event that came up and you came up to the Rebbe and got a bottle of l'chaim to share at the celebration. The Rebbe encouraged that. And again, that first year was marked in a tremendous fashion. But there were two things that happened in that year. One was the week after. when the Rebbe put a stop to the week of dancing. Now there are the videos of the dancing of Shimon Lazarov, and the Dolan Chaim, his Shvelevich Shapiro. It was really great. It was unbelievable. You saw people dancing all night, and many working people went to work all day, and then came back to dance all night. This went on for, And then the Rebbe put a stop to it, and we came back to Ohel Teira, and we found a very fascinating scene. Anybody remember? Our Gemoras were right there the way we left it, with a pen on the side. It was mamish. Nothing was moved for a week. We were moved, but the objects were there, and the Rebbe gave us an intense schedule, every 10 days a test, which was very interesting and very unique. And then fast forward came Beis Kislev, as you saw in the video. The books were actually returned after the Rebbe spoke about the Tipa Doma, that appeal, the Rebbe referred to it in a very spiritual fashion, and we didn't know what to expect. So I waited on the side. I can still hear the Rebbe screaming, here we are, and the Rebbe really put us into place in a very unique fashion. He taught us, as he said in the Sicha, Didan Notzach, what is the victory? The Rebbe screamed at the Farbrengen earlier, Didan from the Sforim, that when Sforim, books are victorious, that means get to the books. Yes, we had our dancing, we had our lachaim, we had our joy, and we continue to rejoice. But the Rebbe took us and really grounded us again in the most unique of fashions, as literally, again, took us along the journey. And I heard from someone who was there on the 2nd of Kislev, Beis Kislev, and he was uncomfortable standing outside. He was a Bachar in Ohel Teira at the time, a year or two older than myself. So he decided he's going to be inside 770. And then, as things will play out, either we'll go out to dance, if that's the thing, because there was, confusion, so to say, what would be the right thing to do. And he described to me once how he's sitting there like a goody-goody, as we call it, and suddenly the doors storm open, and hundreds of yeshiva students just storm through the doors, and all are shaken. We all got that wake-up call in the most unique way. Only the way that Rebbe can share it with us. So the celebration means a lot to us. To share the memories, I asked a few friends who are here this evening, how do you express it? There is really no way to adequately express in words the joy that we experience, and for that matter, even the pain that we experienced, that we went along that roller coaster, and the challenge, and seeing the Rebbe in pain. But at the same time, when it comes Hei Teves, we got to relive it. Yes, by buying Sforim. The Rebbe then quoted the Rosh, that buying Sforim is as good as writing, or even better, it seems, than writing a Sefer Torah, writing a Torah scroll. You use them, you learn them. The Rebbe reinforced, that's where we have the Miftzah, the campaign of buying Sforim. I spoke with a person who was in the furniture business. He says, I'm very grateful to the Rebbe. 2 campaigns put me in business. The campaign of Bayis Moli Sforim, when the Rebbe encouraged every home to be filled with books, and when now we need bookcases. And then after Hei Teves, when the Rebbe said to buy books again, he said, that really reinforced my business. I'm forever grateful. Obviously, when I asked him for a commission to Chabad, it didn't work, but that was another story. But the idea is the Rebbe really allowed us into this, I would say, intimate experience, and made it part of our life, and allowed us to be a part of that simcha and that joy. So the Rebbe should help, that we should have the ultimate nitzach, and we shouldn't just talk about it. We shouldn't just have to relive it as a memory, but we should be reunited with the Rebbe in the very immediate future for who you go later. L'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim. No? L'chaim, Shkoyach Zalman, Rabbi Zalman, Rabbi Volovik. L'chaim, l'chaim. Tada, alay, Didan Notzach, Didan Notzach. Rabbi Zaklis. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure and honor to meet you. Didan Notzach, Didan Notzach, Didan Notzach, L'chaim, l'chaim. The end of the Farbrengen of Tezvav Tammuz, the Rebbe, before he sings Sheyibone Beis HaMikdash, he says the Ilum should say L'chaim und die, wo seien auf dem Telefon, sollen nicht sagen L'chaim und durch dem stehen sie bekesher. Mit die, wo seien da, that those who are on the telephone, on the hookup, should also say L'chaim, and that's how they are connected with here. Today, we've moved on from the telephone, and hopefully the internet is working, and those who are on the internet and watching on HeiTavis.com should also say L'chaim, and through saying L'chaim here, and through saying L'chaim wherever you are all over the world, we are connecting with each other in this celebration of Hei Teves. So L'chaim, L'chaim. Just want to add, Stama to the Bachrim, this following detail is very well known because it went, as we call it nowadays, viral in the last couple of days. But Rabbi Volovik mentioned in his words the controversy about the sign and the Farbrengen of Hei Teves, Tavshim Ches Shabbos and Metzoi Shabbos. So the other day, Rabbi Katzman shared at length on WhatsApp and on the other means of publicity some of the controversy, which is irrelevant for now. Most importantly, he says that after the Farbrengen of Metzoi Shabbos, Hei Teves Tavshim Ches, he wrote in a duch to the Rebbe with regards to the Farbrengen, and the Rebbe answered Niskabel, V'tach tach, U'biyeser v'chulu, Asker alatzi, and I received the duch. Thank you, U'biyeser. And according to his description, the way he was told by the maskir was that the word ubiyoser was a very unusual word in this context, to say tach ubiyoser. But clearly, from time to time, even in the times that we find ourselves now, there are his galus and there are revelations of answers from the Rebbe that give us guidance into how we should conduct ourselves and how we should celebrate, especially when it comes to a Yom Pagra. A few years ago, there was an answer from the Rebbe with regards to Yudalit Kislev Tavshin Lametes. After the Farbrengen of Chassidim, the Rebbe wrote, Hayitachin, there's no mention in the Duch of Merakdin. Merakdin is something that the Gemara says with regards to a Chasana. So there's something wrong? Huh? It's good? So the Rebbe guided us. And maybe people didn't know this in the past, but today, because of the time that we are in, we sometimes need extra gilui and an answer and a minor. So he told us that Yudalit Kislev is a time for Meragdin. So in the last couple of days, B'Hashgacha Pratis, this answer was found, and he says that when it comes to the Farbrengen and the Suda Seidah, Suda with Challah and washing and flesh, to celebrate Hei Teves is something that the Rebbe says on that Niskabel v'tach tach u'biyeser v'chulu. Asker alatzion. Anyway, I want to ask our Rabbi Levitin. I have to apologize. You were supposed to be first. Not first, but you're supposed to be before Rabbi but I didn't see you. But now that I see you, so I want to ask you to come up and speak. And we know that the Rebbe spoke very, very much throughout the entire Tkufa about the idea of building Batei Chabad. In the end of the Farbrengen, not in the end, in the Farbrengen of Dalet Tammuz, the Rebbe speaks about the idea of Hu B'chaim in Anefen, Bizvanen tas ver der Riker, und alle Iberike wären seine Schluchim. Und mit dem Schuss, als sie wären Schluche Shaladam Kemoisei. So I'm going to ask Rabbi Levitin, who I apologize for calling you a senior Shliach, but you're a senior Shliach. Teves soll dir geben gesund und ein ariches Jahr mit Hei Teves. But we would like to hear from you a little bit about the relationship of the Rebbe and the Shluchim in the Tkufa leading to and after Hei Teves. So Rabbi Levitin, the head Shliach of Washington State, V'Aglilos, please.
Chaim.
What am I supposed to do with it? It's about as good as I can do.
Shabbos Mevachim Chedesh Nisan Tovshin Mem Zayin. English. The Rebbe by the Farbrengen.
Understands Yiddish, but the internet doesn't. The English.
The Rebbe by the Farbrengen, talking with a lot of emotion. I wasn't there, but what I heard at the end said, Shluchim. That was the word that we got. I get the Sibir Shluchim, which immediately, I think was Rebbe Yisrael Shmotkin, one of the Chavenim in the Vad Igur HaShluchim, which was formed immediately. Rebbe Yitzchak Gonol Vashalom Baal Shem Tov, Chassidim, Moshe Harrison, Shmuel Lazarov, Mendel Lipska, the other Chavedim which came, and we made a Vad. The Shaila given, Nachal Tzdoa, L'cheira, there were those who were already involved in the whole Pasha from the Sfarim. What was unique, that the Rebbe said after a year and a half, it gives us a bit of shluchim. I'm going to share with you a word. Een eigen woord. Yisrael, mag ik ook een eigen woord, Yisrael? Ja. Oké. Dus wat de verbrenging spuiten. Tovshin, wenn der friedige Rebbe ankommen in Amerika, Pesach was spent, the friedige Rebbe went to Lakewood, New Jersey. The Rebbe was the big Gevir, Yedid, who gave the Rebbe his whole house for Pesach. They mitgefahren Asach from the ältere, they were young then, and Ogelos the Mishpachas, good friend, the day the Shmuel gewend on America, out of Shadav, Tovshin Tzadik Ches onkommen in El. He obviously was with the Rebbe. Once during that stay in Lakewood, had the Rebbe the Geus gedrückt zum Seiden, wegen der gewaltige Masrus, der gut was said, von den Jiden waren gekommen, alles Ogelost, left everything behind, to come Pesach, to be with the Rebbe. Bechlau, wherever the Rebbe went, that whole Gvadia went with the Rebbe, Friedige Rebbe. The Rebbe gerät zum Seiden wegen dem Indien. Danach hat der Rebbe gesagt, der Friedige Rebbe gesagt, der Wort. aber ich weiß nicht, du hast eine gute Freundschaft zu es Kashrus. Das heißt, dass du hast eine gute Freundschaft, du hast Kashrus. Das ist einfach das Fach verbringen, wenn der Wort. In jene Jahren bei der Pasche von das Forum, not the books, das Forum. Der heilige Forum. He's given, like was mentioned before by Rebbe Lvovik, gave a beautiful presentation, wherever he is. That's given divas who were very involved, who were suggesting different approaches how to deal with the situation. We'll just leave it at that. We're going to shakel v'tayah. And the suggestions were brought to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe responded. Getreie Jiden, wohl verhitnag bis Nefesh, der Rebbe von der Rebbesen, v'chulu, meant well, mean well. Da gute Freundschaft, da ist Kashrus. Mit der eingebrachte Gevadia, der eingebrachte Tankisten. The boys were called home. Und das ging auf Vechom da. Da der Vechom. Ja, verstanden, nicht verstanden, verstehst ja, verstehst nicht. It's totally irrelevant. Gebrachte Schluchim, sie gewähnt bis 4 Rotzen von Rebben, hat reingelegt in die Pasche. Rabbi Yisrael, I don't want to interrupt you. Ja, warte die Schluchim. Wer noch Rebben wegen da? Wegen der Schluchim. Ja. So, oder wie mit gerufen jemand der Brigade came. Wissen des Mann, da Wissen von der Werte. Wir hatten als Mann, was man sagt, offen, wie der Rebbes tun mit jeder eine. Heinten früh, I got a email, was written 2:30 a.m., Seattle time, 5:30 a.m. Wegen a Shliach in a Stadt, a Balabas, a woman wrote me an email. Beautiful, beautiful email. The Shliach doesn't yet know about this email. And she says, this language, that the Rebbe's vision is being realized. Couple is Yisrael Treidel mit ein Rebbetzin in Renten. Beautiful, beautiful email. There's a lot of Shemtivs in this room. So that's the language. I have it here with me. The Rebbe's vision is being realized. That in Renton we could say today they're the formal Jewish community. They schreibt the frei Erev Hei Teves. Man sagt andere offene Sachen, alle sagen dort. Man darf nicht sagen, viel kann gehen Maimen. Abiel, mit dem Mann Fair, Abiel, mit uns verbracht, hat nicht so viel geredet wegen Amuna. Geredet wegen Emes. Abiel und der Kude gewinnen Emes. Stell sich vor, Dr. the 15-year-old boys. Okay. Try to envision, he told us, in the beginning, Chavbeis, that you're standing in the in the whole world, in the Dal Lamas from Rebbe Fichides, that is Mokim Emes. Das gewinnt einer Farbrengen. Amuna hat man Abiel nicht geht zu viel wegen Amuna geleben. So man lebt in that site that is kind of, the emotions are difficult and mixed. Do a Rambam in Hilchus Broches, da bringen a Rambam. So Rambam, der Rambam passt na de la locha. Wir gab ein Jungen, was in Leben, da machen die Broches a Teva Meitev, und da machen die Broches Shechianu, und da machen die Broches Dein Emes. Sagt der Rambam a Matziv, a situation which happens in life, we have to make simultaneously Dayan Emes and Shechianu. We can do that Matziv. How can a person emotionally feel Dayan Emes und Shechianu? Has Shechianu und Dayan Emes. Trach wegen dem Rambam Notzach. We live in a zaman where everybody want to hear noch Gimel Tamas. Zet men push it off in the Sachen. I mean, mamish every day in our lives. Zet, von zweiten Seite, da mit zerbrochene Iden, was die gewinnen Gimel Tamas. Man lebt und man zet, we experience zusammen mit dem, als Gimel Tamas gewinnen. Good da, am Metzies, is da, yeah? Shows the quality of our generation. For the younger Chevra to elicit that kind of Mahalach in Leben, not once, wie der Rambam schreibt, a Psuda, which Medak Dayana Emes, und Medak Shechianu, an ongoing life, Munpen bei uns, von einer Seite, ist mit that offen, wie der Rebbe da mit jeder eine. Und man darf gar kein Meimen auf dem. Bis that ist Mamisch bemuchisch. Sachen, which took years to develop, kommt da eine junge Couple, in a kleine Städtel, die junge Chevre, in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, buildings, mices, right up at cats, boom, boom. Offen. Zusammen mit dem, Montmin v'seineinu l'ris malkeinu. Never stop me willen then the Rebbe neshama beguf. Not one iota do we stop demanding mit der Festkeit, looking him in the eye. Du Rebbe neshama, du kommst uns, und du kommst nicht zu uns mehr, du kommst mit dem Rebbe. Weil der Rebbe will sein zusammen mit Chassidim, mit Jiden, Klal Yisrael, mit der Welt, an neshama beguf. And we don't give 1 second on demanding that. Nor should we. Ever. Until it's realized. Zusammen mit dem, Zet doch. Right. Zet, offen Sachen. Das heißt, the Kirches seien da. No generation had to go through that in a certain way. Noch ein epidemic Kirch. Mit geht mit der Festkeit. Der Menachem Mendel, Chaim Muschke Schluchis, befrate Schluchis. Zählt am Meister, warum Paris? You do the Meister, so kommen a brief von Riga, before the Friedrich ever went to Eretz Yisrael. Kommen a brief from Chatsche Fegen to Avram Paris. Als bei Rebbe is eng. You know what eng means? It's tight. Rabbi Shmotkin knows what it means tight. It's tight. You know, it's tight. Not Rabbi Shmotkin Jr., but Rabbi Shmotkin Sr. No, it's tight. You know, dreig with the banks, boom, ba. Rabbi Kunyan, our master. Okay. Ich was, erzählt mir am Meister, als Avram Paris hat gehabt an Nachla. A piece of farm property, the son that he had a piece of property. He went, sold it, gehalten das ganze Geld von Rebbe. Weggeschickt mit ihm das Geld, umgefahren mit noch 2 Jiden in Erzisroel, Rabbi Schmotkin und Sholem Poisner, kleinen Maimen von Rebbe. Heint, de Schluchim, aber ach, es kam die Schluchim von verkaufte Häuser von Rebbe. Bei Rebbe ist eng. Bei Rebbe ist eng. It's tight. De Schluchim von außerwegen von Rebbe. Without a hesitation. Without even a... Man darf haben Geld von der Schluchim, gab eine Sache. Habe ich gerufen, als Schluch im Staat zu sein. He said, I can do half what you're asking. So I might show you in Washington State. I can do half. Nice gift. I have to put together something. 10 minutes, 5 minutes later, he called me back. No, I'm doing the whole thing. My wife said I got to do the whole thing. Well, the shlucha. That happened to me. The Avovda. On the spot. No, do the whole thing. It's in Malkeinu. We can handle both emotional experiences. Der Rebbe ist da, besetos, zusammen mit dem darf man sehen, dem Rebbe, Neshama beguf. That's the expectation of every chassid, every yid. And don't let go. Wir tun sich verkaufen, da sind der Dashim da. We're not taking it. No, nothing. Not one iota. Mehr Mund mit der Kiefes. Rabbi Slonim is going to remember this. Rabbi Slonim, you're falling asleep right on me. Da noch ein Rambam, da für ein Rambam. Stood about a nigla doing them in this room. Now stop. Hilche Schmiede V'Yevel. Zum Sof, sagt der Rambam, hat der Rambam, bin Shevet Levi. So in die Geidik in der Kude, ach Monel Atzlan, wenn es sich gewähnt der Meister, wo darf nicht der Mannen, once in 40 years, hat Moshe Rabbeinu gesagt und Akol, Mila Hashem Elai. Once. Only once. Very gekommen, one tribe. Shevet Levi. It doesn't say any of the Shevet Levi were not there. But it also doesn't say anybody outside of Shevet Levi was there. Shevet Levi. Sagt der Rambam, die gedut der Rambam. Lomolei zochel Levi benachas Yisro ubizot amachov. Why wasn't Shevet Levi zeicha merit to have a nachla? Ich tachet Gafne, ich tachet Enosei. Mein eigen Chabad house. Mine. Mine. Huh? Mine. Menei shehivdo lavid Hashem l'shosei u'lehei deis d'roch ma'isham mishpat v'atzadik l'rabim. Why? Because they were unique. Their whole metzias is what? L'shosei. Ich tachet Gafne, ich tachet Enosei. Ich doch hey, nicht l'shosei. Was mir gegangen jetzt ist roh? Essen Pizza. Don't have gemina. L'shosei u'lehei d'rocha v'ayishorem mishpatim hadik l'rabim. And then man conclude Shevet Levi b'lvad. Ela kol ish v'ish mit kol bo'elam. And the footnote says kol bo'elam. The Medayik from Rambam made a feel of can't feel Muslim. Kol bo'elam. That's a. If you devote yourself completely and totally, not v'ruchei. You're ready for the call. Mein Chabad house, mein shtetl, mein cheder. Nah, we're caretakers. We're managers of the rechush of the Rebbe. Right, Rebbe Shem Tov? We're managers of the rechush. We don't know anything. don't own anything. We're managers. Levi had gewusst. Adev l'shosei. The mayor, when the call came, Mila Hashem Elai, he was right there. All of them were there. 100% of them were there. Nobody went AWOL. Everybody was there to respond in that moment of crisis. You know, got the end, you know, get up, uncomfortable, I got a lot, you know. Hei Teves, it is man when we affirm Amadain Shevet Levi. When the call comes, we're there. Whatever it takes. Whatever is needed. Unshyless. It's kashrus. Alle cheshbenes wees the Rebbe eichid. The call, absolute, geht, in fire and Wasser. Mein Mund, continue, zusammen, was wir seht, Mamish the Rebbe, al kol shal, wir seht the Rebbe, all that we do. In all our life, go right and left on the freeway. Wir seht Mamish Sachen für offene Sachen. It's a neino liris as makenu. Never stop. Bitte sind der Rebbe nesham beguf.
Wow. L'chaim, l'chaim. I don't know which one is which. Which one is Here, this is the mosque. Shu'ei secha. I need a little more mosque. Niflei secha v'yal yeshu'ei secha. Al niseh. Al niflei secha. And I have to give the seal. Only secha v'yal niflei secha v'yal yeshu'ei secha. Only secha v'yal niflei secha v'yal yeshu'ei secha. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Oops, sorry. I just want to make a mention. First of all, Yishkeach Rabbi Levitin. You know, I'm not going to add anything. They told me that I should, whatever. I'm not going to say anything. You said everything. So we'll leave it at that. And the fact that you're a Levi also, it works out. The Lei Shevet Levi Bilvad. You didn't get that part. All right. So I just want to just make a mention like this, totally unsolicited, but a couple of days ago, I went onto Ashreinu app, Ashreinu.app, and there's a timeline of the Hei Teves Siches, starting from Yud Beis Tammuz. It's pashut, incredible. It includes also things that like the Hisvadus Chassidim, but there's a Sicha after Sicha. If you want to understand Hei Teves, besides obviously the amazing Farbrengen and Me'oderim and speakers that we have tonight, pashut to understand Hei Teves, Sai the Kitrug, and Sai the Nitzochen, and it just, you can hear it directly from the Rebbe himself, and it's laid out, all the work is already done. So you just have to go, the first thing is a playlist or a timeline, whatever it's called, and I Pashta enjoyed it. I'm still in the middle, but I Pashta enjoyed it, and I'm sharing this. Nobody asked me to say anything. I Pashta sharing with you that if you want to experience Hei Teves, of course, Farbrengen tonight, encourage others to Farbrengen, say l'chaim, but the Ashreinu app has a whole playlist of siches, Yud Beis Tammuz, Yud Dalet Tammuz, Tezvav Tammuz. They don't have Shabbos Pinchas. It just didn't work out. But it's just a suggestion, unrelated to tonight. I just want to also, the Farbrengen is coordinated by the Vad Vechom. So Yashakayach to the Vader Vechom for this Farbrengen and for everything that they do to bring and to keep the Erev Vechom Ha'Iskashrus alive, as Rabbi Levitin said. It's Pashat, it's Apella Atzum, and from deswegen, despite the Chashchas HaGolus, the Erev Vechom Ha'Iskashrus continues to stay alive and warm and lichtig. And Ishkeach Vader Vechom, Ishkeach Rabbi Abba Refson and Ohel Chabad Lubavitch for hosting here tonight and for everything they do for Chassidim and for Yidden Klal Yisrael the entire year. Chabad.org. Is the internet up yet? Is it up? Is it going? Kvar Mizman. Okay. So Ishkeach Chabad.org and Rabbi Oltein and the team for hosting and streaming the Farbrengen. Rabbi Moshe Rabashkin for the food that was tonight. And that was my thank yous. That was that I have to do. I have to, I want to bring up, ask one more person to come up, but they just sprung on me that Hei Teves is a Siyum Rambam, Siyum Sefer Aveda. So we're going to try to do it very quickly, just to make a Siyum on Sefer Aveda. It's tomorrow, it's Hei Teves' Rambam, and the last halacha of Sefer Aveda is a long one, so I'm going to start in the middle. That David HaMelech had great pain from the people who did not understand what is Hei Teves. There's minim, they had a whole teretz. It was natural causes, and they did not understand. So they would chase him down with different fake, false responses. That are human responses. The answer is to learn the Rebbe's Torah. Shas, you learn Torah, then all the Tshuvas HaSheker and all the Ketzer Das Adam becomes batal. Shenemar Toflu Alai Sheker Zaydim Ani B'Chalev Etzi Pikudecha. That when the Zaydim, when the naysayers come unto me, then with my whole heart I stay close to your pikudim, to your instructions, to your mitzvahs, to your erois. V'nemar sham be'inyin, I lost the place. Kol mitzvah emunah sheker defuni ozreini. That when sheker chases me, then your mitzvahs and the emunah is ozreini. That's what helps me. The chol hakabanos kulam klal hachukim and kabanos are included in chukim. Amru chachamim shebishvi lavedas hakabanos elam emed. Pirkei Avos in the first mitzvah it says, the first mishnah, that one of the three pillars is avedas hakabanos. Shebasiyas hachukim v'mishpatim zeich ma'isharim l'chai elam haba. Then we do the chukim, the eibishter's chukim mishpatim, the things that make sense and the things that don't make sense, but we do them because the eibishter told us to do them. This is how we reach elam haba. Chukim are more important than mishpatim. Mishpatim make sense to us, but chukim, the things that we do, while the Rebbe haste, while the eibishter haste, that comes first. And through doing this is v'chai b'hem yemot lepman. When we learn the Rebbe's Torah and we do the Rebbe's erois, and then v'chai b'hem, then we remain alive despite the minim and the epikursim. Slikulu yechus mila b'sayit shmai nigma sefer shmini vu sefer aveda chesed teisha prakim chamish v'tishim ve'elohein chesed b'sabchiris min prakim chesed temikzah chesed prakim chesed b'smikos chesed prakim chesed mizbeach chesed prakim chesed ma'asakbanos chesed prakim chesed min b'sof masar prakim. Almost there. Hilchapsul Mikdashim Tisha Shaprakim, Chazvezim Kipurim Achmishaprakim, Hilchasmilush Ben Aprakim, Lacha Ezbach Zevach Teda, Uveshem Hashem Mekra, Sefer Tshi, Shem Hashem Kelelam, Sefer Shivu, Sefer Kabanis, Ches Shesh Zazuduran, Ches Karben Pesach, Ches Chagigah, Ches Mechelis, Ches Kagas, Ches Kvarach, Ches Pura, Hilchas Karben Pesach, Yes Bechon Shesh Mitzvah, 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 Praton, and I'm going to stop over here because no one is listening anyway. Mazel Tov for the Siyum of Hilchas Aveda. And now we are starting Sefer Karbonis. The Rebbe is helping that for those of you and those of us who have learned Sefer Aveda, which is the Rebbe's Heirah, and today's Hei Teves, Didan Notzach. So for those of you who are buying Sfarim, should buy a set of Rambam. And if you already have a set of Rambam, today they have sets of Rambam with the Rebbe's Biyurim. And if you have to pick a Sefer that you're going to learn in, Didan Notzach, I have a lot of suggestions, but suggestion number one, that's man grama of a Siyum Rambam. You should buy another set of Rambam, one with the Rebbe's Biyurim. You should learn Rambam and understand the Rambam, and as we finish Sefer Aveda, we should be zeicha to finish Sefer Aveda, and by the Sima Sefer Karbonis, Sima Sefer Karbonis will be in the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi zusammen mit dem Rebbe. Chaim. Let's do a niggin before we get to Rabbi Shmatkin. Give me a niggin. Chasim Umala. Deyas Hashem kamayim layam mechasim umala. Deyas Hashem kamayim layam mechasim umala. Deyas Hashem kamayim layam mechasim umala. Elam sei l'chaim. Chavre, freitzach abisala. Ashreinu matev chalkeinu. Zag l'chaim. Come on. I don't know. Any mashke here? Still mashke? Malad, Deyas Hashem. Come on. L'chaim. L'chaim. Eden sagt l'chaim. Freitzach abisala. Freitzach asach. L'chaim. Anyway, I was reminded to mention that one of the heroes of Hei Teves was building of libraries, and today the Rebbe's library is raising money to be able to expand and complete the new section of the library. So I was reminded to be me'orer the elam, to be mishtatif in the shiputs and the harchava of the Rebbe's library. I just want to mention, b'hamshich to what Rabbi Levitin was saying, that in the sikha that we were learning this week in Chelik Tesvav, Vayigash Aleph, this Kana Mokim, you'll forgive me, but to be me'orer by the elam, that in all of the heroes of Hei Teves, there's a hero to buy Sfarim, there's a hero in the year that the Yom Zgula, but everyone should remember, those who are here are obviously here, but those who are not here, Begashmi, is to write in a zettel to the Ohel, to the Tzion, for you and for your family. And yes, that the Rebbe tells us that today is a Yom Zgula, but also the Rebbe speaks about the fact that there has to be a chizuk and a saf in limud HaTorah, and the true Evan HaBeichen of the Nitzochin of the Sfarim is the fact that we increase in learning Torah. The Rebbe once used a bitui where the Rebbe says, Bishvili nivra elam, and a person could think that if there's a certain kuntris or a certain sikha that was printed, many people are learning it, and therefore I don't have to learn it. So the Rebbe said, just like it says in the Gemara, Bishvili nivra elam, so too a person should say, Bishvili nidfe sikha, that this sikha was printed for me, and I shouldn't rely on the fact that other people are learning it. I myself have to learn it as well. Bishvili nidfe kuntre sikha o maimer zeh. So I just want to make a mention of the fact that 2 years ago, approximately, there was many Chassidim and Anash and Bachrim began to learn a seder of Likutei Sichos every single week, known as Project Likutei Sichos. In one of the hatzois from Didan Notzach is to take upon yourselves, to those who are not doing it yet, to learn midei shavua b'shavua 2 sichos of Likutei Sichos, and you'll see in your own personal life that as much as you've already been learning, the limud b'seder mesuder or ba'achtus with the rest of Chassidim will actually have a shaychis on you, effect on you in the eifin of Didan Notzach. So in the sikha that we learned this week, I just want to say to Rabbi Levitin that the Rebbe says, why does Yosef ask Hei Teves? He knew already. And explains, the Rebbe explains, I'm saying it very bekitzer, that Yosef was saying, Yosef, that I'm alive, and the Gzeira sheyishtakach min alev wasn't activated. So how could Yankov Avinu survive so many years, so much tsar, for 22 years of not being with Yosef? And why did Yosef say it right now? Because Maru Valu Elavi. Because it was necessary. Yes, that Yaakov was suffering. It was necessary that right away the Shvatim have to go back and tell Yosef, Yaakov, that Yosef is alive to alleviate his pain. And to bring to Vatchiruach Yaakov Aviyam. So b'meila, yes, that it's been more than 22 years, that even though if it might be Acher, but it's Fard Bain, and the separation of the Avul Bain is still so painful, b'meila has to be Maru Valu Alavi. We have to rush and do everything we can to come back to Avi. But then in the Sikha, the Rebbe says one more word. It's almost like 1.5 lines. It's not enough. Atchi ruach Yankov Aviyam. It's not enough. Atchi ruach Yankov Aviyam. It has to be El Chaverenu. Once Yaakov Avinu knows that Yosef is alive, the pain will be diminished, and actually was. Atchi ruach Yaakov Aviyam. But Yosef says to his brothers, bring Yaakov to Mitzrayim. Yaakov has to see me. And Yaakov himself says it has to be El Chaverenu. So b'meila, on the one hand, we're doing everything we can for Maru Valu Alavi, like Rebbe Levitin says. It's Pilei Ploim. V'melep mit Rebbe, v'melep mit Didan Notzach. And nevertheless, it's not enough that it should be Vatchiruach Yaakov Aviyam. It has to be El Chaverenu. We demand that soll sein, soll sich sehen mit den Rebbe. L'chaim. There really is no mosque here. Who are the organizers? Get a little mosque. Not just for me, for everyone. People are sitting around like it's a lecture series. L'chaim, l'chaim. Ay, 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 did I? Hey, ay, 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 ay. Hey, ay, ay, did I? Ay, 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 yada, yada, yada. Hey, yada, 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 yada. Hey, yada, 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 yada. Chaim, chaim, chaim. Anyway, shh, sorry to interrupt. Singing, that's something we should be singing and dancing. Aber fort, mit auf der Reden wegen Maru Valu Alavi, mit auf der Reden wegen zurückkommen, zurückfahren zum Rebbe, and how we connect to the Rebbe, even in today's day and age. There has to always be a Bechein of Hei Teves of Didan Notzach. So I'm going to ask Rabbi Shmai Shmotkin to be Mamshich the Farbrengen, to talk about the Bechein, the Peil Mamish of Didan Notzach. Rabbi Shmotkin. I think I'm done. I think I did my part.
Yeah.
Sit next to you to give you support.
Rabbi Levitin, L'chaim. Rabbi Levitin, I thought your Siyum Rambam was something special till Rabbi Gurari showed us how to do it. So you see, when the Rebbe speaks about Yutes Kislev, Yud Beis Tammuz, that with every year, the Rebbe speaks about every single detail, every dimension of the story, the Meiser, the Geula. 1 year one thing, 1 year another prat. With Yud Beis Tammuz, what was the Frierdiker Rebbe doing when they came to arrest him? And what was going through his mind when he went through the hallways? And what happened to the Chassidim that were being mishtadlek? Year after year, looking at another prat and taking a hira from it again and again and deeper and more. So I want to just stel sich for a minute on one nekuda, one of many obviously that have to do with Hei Teves, and hopefully be able to be helpful for us to focus in on something that can be helpful in terms of being a chassid of the Rebbe. When the story of Hei Teves, when it started, when the Rebbe started speaking about it barabim in the summer of Tavshem Mem Hey, so I was like the age of many of the younger Bachrim here. I was 14 years old. And even though we used to listen to hookups of the Rebbe, obviously we didn't understand everything that the Rebbe was speaking. We still don't understand everything the Rebbe was speaking. But the Sichos of Yud Beis Tammuz, Tesvav Tammuz, the Yechidus, I remember exactly the words that the Rebbe used, not all of them obviously, but exactly where I was standing in camp in the trailer with a suction cup on the payphone, with the mosquitoes biting, with a little loudspeaker. Because the way the Rebbe spoke and the agmas nefesh, the pain, and I think the only word the anguish that the Rebbe was talking with was something that, even as a little kid, it was something that we never heard before. It was something unlike anything we had ever seen, and even as a little kid, we realized that this was something different. We heard sichos about Shleimus Haaretz, about Mi Yehudi. There was something totally different about this. I remember, and like Moshe said, Rabbi Gerari, that suggesting to listen to the sichos that the Rebbe spoke to Chassidim during the summer of Tavshem Mem Hey, when it started, those that were able to hear, that one of the expressions that the Rebbe used, it was especially in the Sikha of Tesvav Tammuz. The Rebbe said that he wants to speak Bekitzer Nimritz about, because it's an inyan that's so shocking and painful, he's going to keep it Bekitzer, and the Rebbe spoke for more than an hour. And one of the things that the Rebbe was speaking about was why I'm speaking about it and no one's doing anything. One of the lashonos that the Rebbe used then was, Ich ha gehofft, as Chassidim wollen mir versparen. I was hoping that Chassidim would spare me, that I should have to myself, whatever you want to call it, get involved with it. There was, you look at the words of the Sikha, there was a Ursprach that am reist ab Sticker von Leben von dem Schwer und sie schaut still. Man geht sich spazieren, man ist ein Chassid von Schwer, man lernt Chassidus, man lernt dem Schwer's Chassidus. That a person is a Chassid of, the Rebbe was obviously speaking about the Frierdiker Rebbe, and yet this is going on, you're watching this going on, and you learn Chassidus, you learn the Frierdiker Rebbe's Chassidus, you're obviously a real Chassid of Frierdiker Rebbe, and sisha still, and life isn't disrupted, totally disrupted. If you think about it, the Rebbe was telling us that there's a metzias that a person can be or consider themselves or be a chassid, learn the Rebbe's chassidus, care about the right things, and yet he's missing a inyan ikri b'yoser, a fundamental thing about what it means to be a chassid. I can tell you that we saw, and the Rebbe showed us an example of what a chassid is. That the Rebbe for the Sfarim was ready to do anything. Anything. If it meant testifying in court, the Rebbe said he'll do it. The Rebbe said he's just worried about how it's going to affect the Bachrim. It's a separate Farbrengen. I remember in the summer, in the winter of Tavshem Mem Zayin, I was a boy learning in Cheder away from home in Detroit, and I remember while the Mishpat was going on in the winter of Tavshem Mem Vav, every day, all the kids in Cheder with all the teachers and all the moras used to come together and say Tehillim. We knew that the shluchim around us were fasting for half days. We were little kids. We were little bar mitzvah bachrim, 14 years old. Giving tzedakah. We knew, as much as we didn't understand, we knew that something was going on that was die Welt hat gezittert. I don't know if I'm not saying it l'mal yusa, l'ger yusa. I don't know if the issue that it was over, the Zarei B'chaim, what the Chai Atzadik is, if we understood it like we understand and how negay it is to us today. One thing even a child understood is what the Rebbe was going through. It was, you couldn't run from it. And Chassidim that were not like the ones that the Rebbe was describing in that sikha. I remember I stayed at, earlier someone mentioned Rebbe Meir Kagan Olav Hashalom. I think I stayed at his house during those years. And I remember there was nothing else that existed in his life except what was going on with the Rebbe with the Svarim. That was the only thing that mattered. He wasn't a Yachid, obviously. Because, like the Rebbe showed us, to be a Chassid doesn't just mean to learn Chassidus, to learn Chassidus from the Mishver. That's something. But to be a Chassid means to have a different type of responsibility and concern. Like we saw from there, I remember during the summer of Tavshem Mem Zayin, the Rebbe was speaking shturming. By then I was already I'm around the same years as Rabbi Volovik. I was already in Hay Tavis. And the Rebbe was shturming through the whole winter about Batei Chabad. That it's not enough just to have Chabad, that the home of every single Yid has to be turned into a Beis Chabad. It has to take on a new identity. A bias of Torah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, and that even children's personal space, their bedrooms should have a Tzedakah pushkin, a Chumash, and a Siddur. And the Rebbe spoke about it with such force, with such Yisragshus every Shabbos, that after Shabbos, the Rebbe Bechlal, during the winter, Farbrengen, pretty much till the end of Shabbos, it was Mincha, Ma'ariv, the Shabbos was over. And a half an hour or an hour later, there were buses, Itchy Tridal, arranged that there were school buses that used to take all of the Bachrim from Hay Tavis and other Bachrim to different Jewish neighborhoods. It was dark, it was cold, it was winter, to go to knock on doors, door to door, to speak about this inyan that the Rebbe was verkochten, about Beis Chabad. I remember once going into a Fruma neighborhood. It was a big apartment building, and knocking on a door, and there was a person there still in a Chassidish levush, was still Shabbosdik, and we came into his house, and we came in, he saw two Lubavitcher kids, two Lubavitcher Bachrimlach, and he put out on the table some orange juice with some brownies, and I saw it was right after Hei Teves. And he had, for some reason, clipped out from the New York Times the article that spoke about Hei Teves, about Didan Notzach. It was a picture of Vechom dancing. It was a big deal. It was in the news. And I remember we sat down. We came to speak about the Rebbe's in Yonim, about that his house should become a Beis Chabad. And I remember with sarcasm and he says, I don't want to say the words here in this place. You know, there's an argument, there's a disagreement in the Rebbe's family. And the Rebbe was ready to do all of this. The Rebbe said he'll testify, and the Rebbe said he'll out. For sein Rebbe, because that was, the Rebbe said this is what, das ist was man sagt. The Kavod Lubavitch, and then the Rebbe's to testify, to be cross-examined by lawyers that are cross-examining you is not a thing that's meisif in the Kavod of a Melech, and that's why there was such a simcha afterwards when it was averted. Und der Rebbe gewinnt great Erfolg. And the Rebbe was telling us in that sikha, and you can hear it. It's as much as I'll say. It's like nothing compared to hearing it from the Rebbe himself. How the Rebbe's voice is shaking with tsar in the sikha of Tasav of Tammuz. And the Rebbe said, if you're a chassid, how could you sleep while this is going on? Learning chassidus is not. Learning even the Chassidus of the Rebbe is not enough. That's not what it means to be a Chassid. That's not enough. That's not adequate to understand what it is to be a Chassid. Like he said before, Moshe said before, "V'nafshik shura b'nafshik." When it comes to our own things, if it's someone's own parnosa or someone's own gezunt, no one says, okay, listen, it's an unfortunate situation. I'll say a kapitel tilim and that's it. I'm not sure if I'm right. Rabbi Levitin was speaking about the thing with. I think there was a Uisprach from the Rebbe where the Rebbe said, "Ad die Shluchim wollen das nicht erlassen," right? That the Shluchim won't allow this to happen. And the Rebbe showed us an example that amit pegea gewem mit angerührt in sein Rebbe there was nothing that wasn't on the table, nothing that was not going to be done for it. And the Rebbe said, as gehofft that Chassidim wollen versporen. The Rebbe was hoping that Chassidim would spare the Rebbe having himself to do this. So the Rebbe, again, this is amongst the many things that there are to discuss and to learn and to absorb about the story of Hei Teves. Being a chassid doesn't mean that you just study what the Rebbe says or bask in the Rebbe's love or try to do the best to firzach wie the Rebbe will. To be a chassid means when the Rebbetzin said, that little clip of the deposition is going around on the WhatsApps. When the Rebbetzin said that the Svarim belonged to my father belonged to the Chassidim because my father belonged to the Chassidim, it's not just something that's a big schus. It comes with an achrayus. The Rebbe hat sich zugebunden, verbunden mit uns. If the Rebbe devoted himself to us without any limit, like we all know, there has to be a reciprocal type of devotion and care and assuming responsibility for the Rebbe's inyanim. And there's a lot of inyanim from the Rebbe that still need work. Baruch Hashem, not at all times is there a crisis of this level, as something that aber Chosid darf sich zustellen. A Chosid has to step up when the Rebbe's covet is being challenged. and a chassid has to step up. When there's an inyan that the Rebbe spoke about, or the Rebbe wants to see happen, and is not yet done. And it's not a pesad darge and niflesi that no one can do. You see that when a couple of younger light are machlit to do something, people that are busy, people that have families, people that have their own Chabad houses, whether it's that people wake up one day and they decide, I'm going to learn in Likutei Sichos. It's not enough that the Likutei Sichos are in the shelf. The world has to learn Likutei Sichos. Or Rambam. Or that as a kommt a jemand de Pagre, darf man Farbrengen, the Welt darf wissen. These are regular people with Yetzaharas, with Nefesh Abamis, just like us. Aber man darf nehmen zum Herzen, we have to get into our heads that to be a Chassid doesn't mean nehmen a Spazier und learning Chassidus from Rebbe, and then when it comes to responsibility, washing our hands clean. Und das hat unser Rebbe bewiesen. How a chassid is ready to leave everything behind when it comes to something that touches on his Rebbe. So der Rebbe helfen. I didn't mean to Let's
go, come on.
Rebbe helfen. As Amizol, we should get it. We should not be from the Chassidim that the Rebbe was describing them. We should be the Chassidim that, like what Rabbi Levitin was speaking about with the Shluchim, the Shluchim wollen das nicht der Losen. A Chassid won't allow something that touches the kavod of the Rebbe or that stands in the way of something that the Rebbe wants to stop the Rebbe's plan from being realized. We have what the Rebbe wants for us to do. We have to start to do it and stop sleeping. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim. I just want to say, and the Shabbos before Hei Teves Tavshim Zayin. I think it was Zeis Chanukah, if I'm not mistaken. Beis Teves, I don't know the exact math. 7th day of Chanukah. The Rebbe had a whole sikha about Aaron HaKohen, and he said there's Tmidim Kisidran and there's Musafim Kilchasam. Some days when you do everything, then there's... And the Rebbe gave an example. If you go over to a Yid who's dancing at Simchas Torah with a Torah and you start asking Pshat and Bereishis Bara, he's not going to know what you want from him because he's dancing with a Sefer Torah. So Adkan was Yesh Leimar, was Tmidim Kisidram. But B'daf Farbrengen, Musafim Kilchasam, B'daf Tan, Hecher von Tmidim Kisidram. B'daf nehmen the Sefer Torah, B'daf tanzen, no more talk about Bereishis Bara, and anything like that, with our Farbrengen. So, I have to also, what I forgot to say. Yisrael, where are you? There's going to be Rabbi Levitin and Rabbi Weg are informally Farbrengen. Everyone's invited to the 4th tent to Farbrengen with Rabbi Levitin, Rabbi Weg. Die Farbrengen will mamshich sein, lo me nehmen a Sefer Torah in Hand, dem Rebbens Torah, lo me tanzen dem ganzen Nacht, und man soll wissen sein, that tonight is not a night of Tmidim Kisidram, so Tatzman from Musafim Kilchasam, Lamer Farbrengen mit dem Rebbe, Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu, Didan Notzach. Chaim. Ay, 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 ay.
Thank you.